Hey, gorgeous friend. So today our guest is Amanda Timpson. She's been with us before. Amanda is the queer historian that runs the Yesterqueers TikTok and Instagram account. Yesterqueers is a public history project that celebrates the broad expanse of queer history and actively seeks to rectify queer historical erasure. Amanda is a bisexual woman who has taken her hobby of curiosity and love of learning about the past and turned it into her life's passion. We started the conversation talking about putting the sex back in sexuality, kept going with how throughout Western history, sex has always been there, even if it was hidden, and then unpacked the cultural queerness of the queer community. Amanda's the best, and we loved talking to her. We hope that you enjoy listening to the conversation as much as we had having it.
Welcome to Season 7 of the Queer Consciousness Podcast. I'm Kit Sargent, and my pronouns are they, them.
And I'm Jess Grace Garcia, and my pronouns are they, them. We're just humans wanting to share the lived experience of other humans.
This season, we're talking about all things sex. We want to have deep, heart-led conversations as we unpack what sex means to us and why it's so important to talk about it.
This is a season of unlearning, relearning, and sharing about a topic that is still considered taboo.
Because at the end of the day, we are all spiritual, sexual beings having a human experience, walking each other home.
Amanda Timpson, welcome back to Queer Consciousness.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
I am so excited for this conversation, mainly because so very jealously, Amanda and Jess have actually met in real life, and they have hung out, and I am so mad that I live 2,000 miles and 2 time zones away.
We would have so much fun together. I'm bummed
We
that
don't
my
even
wedding...
live 2 miles apart.
No,
Me and
we
Jess.
don't. We really don't.
I know. And here I am, halfway across the friggin' country.
Gotta come visit.
I do.
We're not
did-
going there right now because snow.
It's not snowing. It hasn't. Well, I shouldn't say that because we did get a 12-inch blizzard a month
in
ago.
the last... Yeah, I was going to say, it snowed recently. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it was roughly 3.5 weeks ago, we got a 12-inch blizzard that dumped 12 inches of snow in 24 hours. It was fantastic.
But I was there,
Yes.
and I got to see you, so
You
that
got
was
to-
kind of
yeah.
fun.
You also got to see the aftermath of that because it was still, there was still at least 6 inches of snow on the ground while you were there. And it was 70 degrees outside because, the Midwest in spring.
And Kit and I ran around and played snowballs for a minute, so that
We
was
did.
fun.
That was fun. Not at
Okay,
each
now
other.
I'm jealous.
We did not throw them at each other. We threw them in the same direction towards trees and benches and walls and things because we're not going to hit each other.
It was perfect snowball snow.
It's snowball target practice. I appreciate this.
Well, when
All right,
it's
we
like
can't do that here in Southern California.
that perfect melt where you can compact it and it really flies like a baseball, that's pretty great.
And it makes the real nice smack sound when it hits whatever you throw it at. It's great.
Yeah.
All right, that does sound fun.
All right. So, Amanda,
Yes.
what does sex mean to you?
It's such a good, meaty question. And I've been thinking about it since you invited me on, and I'm still not sure I have a concise answer.
Who needs concisement? Just say all of the things.
It's a new word. I like it.
I think sex means a lot of things depending on who you're experiencing it with, because I think sex can just mean pleasure and fun, and sort of a brief connection. I think sex can mean intimacy and vulnerability, and I think no matter what, it is a form of connection, whether a brief momentary connection or the, deepening of an existing connection. And I think it is, there's very, very few animals on Earth for whom sex is a pleasure act. And humans aren't the only ones. There are other animals who have sex for fun. Dolphins, famously.
Yes.
But I do think that it is I think it's primarily a means of connection of all different types.
Is it bonobos?
Yeah.
That also.
Yes.
Yeah, I think almost all primates, there's like a pleasure element. I mean, I'm not a
Yeah.
zoologist, so
Yeah,
don't.
but bonobos do it just to resolve anything or just because they have free time.
I mean,
Like,
look, I can think of worse ways to resolve problems, honestly.
It's
yeah.
fair. Yes.
If we had sex to resolve conflict, we would live in a very different world.
We would if we could just remove all of the moralizing and all of the
Yep.
things that make people weird about it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think primarily it is a method of connection.
That's been the through line, pretty much,
Mhm.
for the entirety of the season so far. It's a connection. It's a point of connection. It's the ability to connect with someone in an incredibly vulnerable, trust-filled way.
Ideally, yeah, I think not everyone has that experience every
True.
time. But yeah, I think in its best incarnation, it is the most vulnerable and honest way you can connect if you are a person that enjoys sex.
True.
Which is not true for everybody.
This is true.
Gotta remember our ace folks who find other ways to connect.
Some of the ace folks that we've interviewed and maybe by now people have heard some of these interviews, but have said things like, I actually engage in sex sometimes just for the connection with my partner or as play, like as a way of kind of like I do with Dungeons and Dragons, kind of like I do with whatever. And it's so interesting to hear that it has nothing to do with pleasure or desire, but more as entertainment.
Play is the type of pleasure.
I would agree. I think it's interesting. It just depends on who the person is and how they define pleasure.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's definitely broadened our perspective when it comes to how we see sex. I mean, I often talk about, like, if I want sexy times that I don't know are going to result in a climax at the end of things. Like, I just want, what I really want, I realize, is intimacy. And so I've started saying that, like, if I'm requesting intimacy, it doesn't feel like such a big time consuming request.
Oh, interesting.
It's like, hey, I'm desiring intimacy. I would love some, skin to skin contact kind of vibes, and often it's yeah, I would like that too. And that can sometimes lead to the connection we need, and it doesn't always lead to, an orgasm at the end, but it still meets a need and a want, which I really appreciate. It's never a disappointment.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like, goal-oriented view of sex is such a, like, patriarchal capitalist thing, because it's like, it's not. I've had plenty of good sex that didn't result in, like, mind-blowing orgasms or even orgasms at all,
Totally.
And I think this is also where we get into it with straight people sort of not understanding how queer people have sex.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Because, like, I think two men having sex makes more sense to straight people than any other combination of genders having sex does. When we're talking about queer sex, because so often, that is, like, orgasm is not the goal. In many cases, penetration is not the goal. And so you get this, like, well, it's not really sex. And so, well, yeah, it is. Yes, it all is. But and so I think this narrow sort of, like, penetrative, goal-oriented definition of sex, like, doesn't serve anybody. It doesn't serve straight people either, by the way.
Nope.
It can't. Is it them? I think maybe did an article over the weekend, or God, maybe it was The Atlantic, about hetero flexibility, which is such a trigger word for me. Like, I needed to calm down before I could think about how I wanted to respond to it.
I just looked over at Kit's face. I was looking at you because you were talking, and then I looked over at Kit's face, and we both are making the literal exact same face.
Yeah, it is. It is Yeah. And so the whole article is about it was Gay Times. That was it. I just went and looked at it. How like straight-ish is like taking over the mainstream as like this new sexuality, which is basically like people who claim to be straight but like occasionally are interested in someone of a different gender.
That's called
And
being queer.
I'm like, my friends, bisexual. What you are
Literally.
is bisexual.
Literally.
Like,
Seriously, funnily enough, I had this conversation with one of my coworkers because we were talking about that. And I'm not going to say that I am out at work, but I'm not necessarily hiding it. Like, the funny thing is at my old case.
Is it possible to hide it?
No, it's not.
No.
I was like, I've never met you in person, but
not anymore. No, I am very, very, very queer.
I'm not out at work either, you know, like, but
it's not like one of those things where I stood up in the middle of the floor and was like, hello, everyone, I am queer. Like, everyone just kind of like figured it out eventually. And nobody's ever said anything and I've never denied it. So it's one of those things
have to come out as straight. That's what would happen. Yeah.
Right, exactly. But the funny thing is at my old case, they actually have the pride flag that I stuck up there still in the case. Like, it's still just hanging there. And I was like, thank you. But when my coworker and I were actually talking about this, and she's like, I would not be opposed to getting with a woman. And I'm like, so you're saying that you're bisexual? And she's like, well, I wouldn't go that far. And I was like, you just admitted to the fact that you find women attractive. First criteria, you find women attractive. Mm-hmm. Second criteria, you would not be opposed to exploring.
Being naked with one or more.
Correct. You would not be opposed to exploring with one. Third criteria, you have actually openly admitted that you're like, yeah, well, when I was drunk in college, I definitely made out with some of my friends. And I'm like, friend, you are bisexual.
Yeah. I will send you the welcome packet.
Right. Do you lean toward, like, she is married to a man, but I'm like, she's like, yeah, but if we ever got divorced or if he ever dies, never going to get with another man. And I'm like, friend, I cannot say this any louder without screaming it in your eardrums and possibly bursting your brain. Yeah. You are bisexual.
It's so, this like dovetails so nicely with this conversation I've been having with several of my friends about the need to put the sex back in sexuality.
Yes.
Because there is a very specific thing happening right now, especially in like online discourse around queerness, where queerness has become all of these things. And queerness is many things. It is not only who you are sexually and romantically interested in or not interested in the case of our Arrow Ace friends. But it is primarily that, right? Like that is the foundation, is either like who you're sexually and romantically interested in and or what your relationship with your gender is. Like those are the two base points from which all other aspects of queerness spring.
Yeah.
And there has and it sort of started when there was that article going around a couple of months ago now about the woman who says she's a lesbian even though she's attracted to men, you know, and then got mad when people were like, what you're saying is you're a political lesbian. This whole thing. But like there's this desire, and I know where it comes from. It is a fascist, patriarchal, Christian nationalist thing to divorce sex from sexuality.
Yeah.
To say that it is all of these other things. And the thing that drives me insane about this heteroflexible being on the rise, and partially because I'm a person who, when I was still discovering my own queerness, described myself as heteroflexible and then immediately hated myself for it. Like, like even as I said it at the time, I was like, this is not right. But the thing that bugs me about it is a desire to claim what you think are the like cool parts of being queer, if there is such a thing, of the like, you know, like I'm edgy and progressive enough that like I would want to sleep with someone of the same gender, but I'm going to hang on to all of the benefits of being heterosexual in this society by saying that part of me is deviant. Like I am mostly heterosexual with a little bit of flexibility over here. So it's like all of the perks, quote unquote, of being queer, or I guess all of the social capital, it may be a better way to describe that, of being queer without the the real danger of
Uh-huh.
being queer in this time and this place. And it just makes me insane.
Well, especially because they can then at one point be like, oh, no, that was just a phase of my life. Like, I'm actually straight. I was just experimenting, learning more about myself.
Which
and
is
I put
totally
that behind.
valid, right?
Right.
Like plenty of people, I knew plenty of women in college who were like, I think I'm bisexual. And then dated a woman were like, definitely not bisexual. Like, that's fine. Like, it is fine. And that's the thing. It's like, it's fine to just say you're curious. It's fine to say that you're exploring. It's fine to say that you don't quite know where you fit.
None
like,
of
if
us
you are going to-
actually do.
No,
If
right.
you're going to claim an attraction to your same gender, in addition to other genders, as a permanent part of your sexuality, you are bisexual.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, period, full stop. And that's fine. Welcome. It's great here. We have lots of options.
I think you put your finger on it when you talk about the benefits. I mean, like, really, people just do not want to give up privilege. They
Nope.
really don't in any way, shape, or form. And that, like, but also they want to be seen as, especially if they are, in a blue state or a blue city, and the most of their friends are progressive, or they feel comfortable in queer community. They want to be seen as someone who is accepting enough that they would be willing to try something. And then there's the next step of people are actually really disconnected from themselves sexually, and they've either settled for a very specific kind of sex or a comfort, right? Like, I think a lot of people would rather do something that is not good for them, not fun, sad even, but is comfortable. Because they
it's
know
devil
it.
you know. Absolutely.
Yeah, they know what to expect.
I also think for women and people who were socialized as girls, like, there's just nothing in the way that, like, American society, Western society in general, like, none of that is structured to take into account women's, like, pleasure or joy or even active participation in sex.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Right.
one of the things that makes lesbian sex so transgressive, right? Is it's like, 'cause there are zero men involved in that.
Yeah.
Zero men involved, and everyone is still having a great time, and so I think that there are a lot of people who don't know what they don't know, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Like,
Yeah.
who don't know that it can be better, who don't know that it can feel good. And whether that means that you need to find if you're straight, you need to find a male partner who, like, gives a shit about your pleasure and participation. And so I think that's a huge part of it, is like, people just sort of, like, don't know what they're missing.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure what the solution to that, other than everyone, like, what does that mean? I need everyone to get real cool with a lot of stuff real fast.
quick. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
But honestly, like, I just think the world would be such a better place if everyone could just let their freak flags fly and no one had any opinions about it. 'Cause, like, look, as long as everyone is consenting enthusiastically and is of age, you do you. But when we get people like freaking Brian Gnome, like, hiding in his basement to like, as the only way that he can participate in this thing that he finds arousing, like that, then that's how you get, it's not the only way, but it is one of the ways that you get people being out in the world being so cruel, because they're just so screwed up in the inside. We're going to be like, yes, just please, like, wear your fake boobs, shake your ass. You're not hurting anybody, but your wife is hurting a lot of people.
Yeah, she
and
is.
I have some thoughts about that. So it's like, it's all just so, in America in general, like, we're just so puritanical and so screwed up about sex. It's just.
Well, the root of what I think we deal with is just fear. I think that fear is a driving force in Christian nationalism, and yet those who come outside of that system, those who say we don't I don't need that system. I don't need the system of shame and fear. Those people are more willing to take a risk on, like I was more willing to take a risk to figure out my gender after I had spent time in my queerness sorting things out. And then once I figured out my gender stuff, like some of it, I was like, oh wait, I was right when I said that I was bisexual. The first time I'm pan. I'm very, very expansive. I just happen to be partnered, like have better partnerships with women. Like it just is a better experience for me. And I know some of that comes from comfort. And I know that my like fear of like taking steps into doing things with men is has to do with my purity culture upbringing, and that root is fear, but I know it, right? Like I am aware of it, and I am and I am like I'm in a comfy place in my relationships, so I'm not having to challenge that, but I'm not gonna ignore it either, and I'm not gonna say that it's not true. So like we were at a queer line dancing thing the other night for a friend's birthday, and
Amazing.
it was so much fun. It was at Precinct in LA, and I hadn't been there yet. I heard about it, and it was a lot of fun to watch everyone just expressing queer joy and also frustration. You could see all the emotions just kind of oozing out of them as they were, dancing, and I felt myself just like scanning the room and being like, there are so many beautiful people here, like so many attractive humans. And a couple of my friends who are bi were like, okay, so there's a lot of shirtless men here. And I was like, yes, there are. It's very nice. And it's like, even to my bi friends who I don't know if the right term is actively bi, like they're comfortable like dating multiple people, and they're dating right now.
We're all actively bisexual, regardless of how many partners we have or what their gender is.
Whatever. I don't know what to say. Like the people who like are more obvious to the world right now as bi are like, oh, that's right, Jess is bi. Like it's kind of like a moment of like, oh yeah, that's right.
I think that might have more to do with the fact that you're married than the fact that you don't like present as bi.
I've only ever been partnered publicly with women. And I think that's part of it too. It's like when any queer person talks about like their ex, like opposite gendered person, like everyone has that because they it took time to figure out who they were or whatever, right? And I do have ex-boyfriends, but that's because I'm bi, not because I hadn't figured things out yet. Because my first like full relationship was with a woman. So I don't know, it's interesting to
both for me. Like it took me
Yep.
It took me a really, really, really long time to sort of understand and embrace my queerness. Like people ask me all the time now that I do this for a living to like tell my coming out story. And I don't really have one because I had a very, Jess and I have talked about this before. I had a very long process of becoming. Actually, I think I might have talked about it last time I was here.
You did.
And so, but I now know that a big part of that is because I was fat, and people do, and I still am fat. People do not consider fat people to be sexual creatures in any way. So I could use it like a shield. Like I didn't have to answer awkward questions, right? Because like nobody cared to ask any of those questions. And by
people you mean society. That's kind of that's what
my
you're
friends,
saying.
Obviously, they cared. I mean, like,
yeah.
Yes, the broader society.
My literal statement was while I was standing there was like curvy women with tattoos and Daisy Dukes. Oh, fucking kryptonite right now. It's kryptonite.
Yeah, no, my kryptonite is definitely like butch mask people, like regardless of gender, especially ones with forearm tattoos. Like that is a very particular. Scratches a very particular itch.
Amanda, my next tattoo is going to be a forearm tattoo, so we might just need to be careful when we're hanging out the next time.
I have too much respect for your wives to go there, so you're safe.
They actually, what's funny is anytime I share with Jana and Erica, anytime I share with them that like there's chemistry or crushing going on with a friend, they're always like, of course there is. Like they're complimented, and I love it. It makes me feel special because they're always like, yeah, mm-hmm. Because
I do think that's a queer thing too, though. I think in general, queer, and I do mean queer people like who claim a queer identity. I think those lines can be a little squishier. Because I
agree.
think, because I do think that queer people, one, so many of us were so starved for platonic intimacy growing up, that, you know, now that we are in a place where we have access to that, then we're not going to shut it down. You know, and I also think that because, you know, queer people are much more likely to like stay friends with exes and stuff. You know, because once you've found your community, you're less willing to, you know, remove people from it, unless they're, you know, toxic. So I think that that's part of it too. And I do think that that is something that, I think that is one of the things that straight people mean, but they don't really say when they say that like queer people make them uncomfortable. I think that's a part of it, because like straight people and platonic intimacy they're not great at that. Sometimes straight girlfriends can find that kind of like intimacy with each other because we socialize women to be more emotionally mature and like receptive. But especially like there are so many straight men who believe that the like all of their like emotion and vulnerability and intimacy has to come from like an opposite gender partner, you know, as opposed to, you know, having healthy male friendships and you know, stuff. Although that is starting to change. Like there's definitely, you know, especially some sort of like there are some creators that I follow online who are like actively trying to undo that. You know, basically trying to teach men how to be people, which I'm like, yes, you go do that.
The bi wife energy, like
vibe,
exactly. Of men.
Yeah,
yes,
or like, could you please just like participate in your relationships? Like, just emotionally.
The videos
physically.
that go viral about men not knowing that their friend got broken up with, or that they broke up a marriage, and then boom, it's like, yeah, how'd it go? Like the wife is like, how'd it go? Like, how are they? And they're like, I don't know, you know. And it's like, oh man, like this is hard to watch. This is hard to watch. Like,
and I do think that's an American thing too, because we're so into like individualism and exceptionalism. You know, which is again why I think we're so screwed up about sex, because turns out that's not a thing. Well, yeah, you can have sex by yourself, but like it's a different experience than having sex with one or more other people.
True.
Yeah.
Hey, listeners of Queer Consciousness. Clearly, you have excellent taste, so we wanted to introduce ourselves. My name is Elise, they, them.
I'm Carrie, she, they, and together we created our podcast Proudly on Record to give a platform to queer stories as an act of resistance.
We would love to invite you to join our conversations with queer folks exploring the long-term effects of religious trauma, journeys of deconstruction, and the joy that comes from living life as your true, authentic self.
Lately, we've spoken with conversion therapy survivors, explored the sapphic drag queen scene, asked ex-Mormons how they survived without caffeine, and interrogated mental health experts on why. Just why?
So, if you've ever felt entitled to monetary compensation due to your religious trauma, or have ever wanted to waltz with potatoes up and down the produce aisle,
have we got a show for you? You can find Proudly on Record on all streaming platforms.
Now, back to our favorite theys, Jess and Kit.
Welcome, ladybugs and jelly beans, reptiles and crocodiles, to patreon.com/Queer Consciousness Podcast Race today. We have a wonderful field of horses that are all set up and ready to go. And they're off. In the lead is the community tier. This tier is eating up the track as it goes, giving you things like access to Kit's blogs, as well as a Patreon-exclusive conversation. It helps the podcast pay for things like the podcast feed and the recording setup. But close behind it is the producer tier. This tier pays Jess for all of their hard work on making this podcast sound as great as it is, as well as the video editing for YouTube. As they make a way down the backstretch, if you sign up at this tier, you'll get a shout out at the end of the episode. They are rounding the last turn and coming down the home stretch. Making a break for it is the patron tier. They are closing the gap. This tier is the one that will help the podcast be able to give back to the queer community. And it is a three-way tie as they dive across the finish line. Thank you, ladybugs and jellybeans, reptiles and crocodiles, for coming to patreon.com/queerconsciousness podcast race today. We hope you enjoy, and good luck to all the competitors.
Anyway, putting the sex back in sexuality.
Which is like perfect because this is like we had mentioned it before, but now I can actually like legitimately segue into it. Like when you were talking about putting the sex back into sexuality, especially from a historian's standpoint, like specifically you as the queer history expert, going deep diving all of these queer folks.
It's me. I'm the only one.
Yeah, that's fair.
Eric Savini, who?
And we got you here, folks. We got the only queer historian here today.
We got her twice, actually. She's back for round 2. Had so much fun the first time, we had to do it twice.
Sure.
And so I was just curious to ask, like, how many times have you, like, gone into doing research about a particular person or about a particular time in history, and how much sex had been either mentioned or talked about or explored or shared or anything like that? Because like it kind of feels like now, like the late like pretty much after the pandemic, sex had started to come back to the forefront because people had started to realize, oh, because we're in lockdown, I can only have sex with either myself because safety, or the person that I'm living with who we haven't had sex in, I don't know, 2.5 years, and now they are literally my only option.
Yeah. It's interesting, and I'm gonna say that most of the research that I do is Western history. And so that is a very particular lens. So you'll see stuff like the Tegernsee letters, right? Which are like 11th century letters from Bavarian nuns, where they're talking about, I miss the way you touched and kissed my little breasts, which is like very... it's very obvious what they're talking about, although there are certainly many male scholars who are like, well, that's just a metaphor. And I'm like, that is, no. If you want a metaphor, you talk about like the beautiful rosy breast of a robin, like not,
right?
But in so many cases, it's, it's like a little bit more hidden, right? Like Walt Whitman wrote this series of 12 poems called Live Oak Wood Moss, I think. And they're the only series of poems that we have of his where he talks about being gay, about being in love with a man. And what he did is he took those poems and he broke them all up and hid them in leaves of grass. And there was exactly one notebook of his that showed the poems as they were meant to be, like in a collection. And it wasn't until like 1950 that a scholar found that notebook and went, oh God, these are what these poems actually are, and like pulled them all out of leaves of grass and like put them together.
Wow.
So sometimes it is very hidden. Sometimes it's barely hidden in poetry, poetic language. But the thing is, like, throughout history, people have always had sex, and like the desire to have sex drives a lot of decisions, both good and bad,
Yeah,
for sure.
Like the first, one of the first women in Europe who was ever executed for being a lesbian, like, was in the 14th century. And one of the things that was like a major point at her trial is the fact that her wife and the woman she was accused of sleeping with didn't know that she had been born a woman because she had a very realistic leather phallus. And like, by whatever series of like keeping partially clothed in the dark, I don't know, they didn't realize that wasn't a part of her body.
Whoa.
wow.
Or at least that's what they said in court. Is that
Sure.
true? Who knows?
Fair.
But that's what they said in court, right? And so that's like, that is absolute evidence of the fact that these women were fucking, like, regardless of what else they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
and they were doing it for pleasure. You know, they were doing it because they were in love. Like, who knows? That part's a little lost in the historical record, but like that is a thing that they were doing, and there are stories like that all throughout history. You know, like Oscar Wilde did not go to prison because he and Bosie were exchanging letters. You know, like
Right.
and I think that the actual sex often gets sanitized out of our stories. You know, there's a wonderful like writer and photographer named George Herrera, whose work I love. Like he's written a bunch of like cruising guides, like modern cruising guides. And he like addresses this a lot in his work, you know, like there is a sex element to sexuality. And even in the case of people who are ace, like that is still an element, you know. It is just like they have a different view of sex, like sex serves a different purpose in their lives, but it's like it's still an element, you know. And it's like, yeah, it's just we're trying to divorce those two things, and we can't.
Well, going back to your original answer about talking about connection, it's so interesting because what you just said brought up for me that like my ace friends are some of the most attentive, most giving, like most connected friends I have.
Well, yeah, because
like
if you got to play life
most
without
romantic.
the shortcut, then like you have to do the work.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like in a lot of ways, especially you know, I think especially for women, especially in unequal relationships with men, it is a shortcut, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, you know, whether or not both of those people are participating in the same act at the same time, you know, they might both be in the bed, but having very different experiences. But it's a shortcut. And if you take that shortcut off the table, then yeah, you have to talk about things. You have to find other ways to solve problems, to, you know, connect, to whatever, because you can't just be like, fine, let's, you know, get naked for 20 minutes and then it'll all be okay for a week or whatever.
I don't know if this is like a rabbit trail we want to go down, but I am going to mention it because I do find it's what's kind of coming up for me right now, which is one of the conversations that Jana and I have been having a lot about is kind of connected to her alexithymia. Do you guys know what that is?
I don't.
Alexithymia is, hopefully I don't butcher this definition, but it's basically not feeling your emotions, not knowing
Interesting.
the emotions that you are feeling, like knowing how to name them. Like you might be having an emotional experience, but be less aware of like, oh, this is happening. It also means that when you want to access your emotions sometimes and like, you know, express a feeling of like whatever feeling, like this is what I'm experiencing, it makes it really, really difficult. And that could even when you want it to do it in a positive sense. So, one of the things that I've been thinking about is like when you were talking about, you know, men struggling with this, I'm like, is this something that we've almost trained into young boys and men to be disconnected from their emotions to the point where they just cannot reach them? And so when they're wanting to reach, it is extremely hard work to get to the point where they're like, and not actually, I'm going to expand that and say like intimate emotions and like positive emotions
Literally
and
anyone's
empathetic
except anger.
Emotions. Yes.
Like
Thank you.
We
That's
teach
what I'm
men and
getting
boys
at.
that there
Yes.
is one emotion, and it is anger.
Yes, exactly. And that sadness equals anger, and that passion equals anger, and that, you know, whatever, excitement equals anger. And it's so interesting because one of the things that we're constantly working through is, you know, saying, I like to hear, I'm a very verbal, like, human. I like to hear words of affirmation. And so I'm saying like, hey, like, how do you feel in this situation? Or how are you feeling right now about me? Like, what's a good thing you could say about me? And so we're having to work through that because that's something that she wants to do for me because she loves me. And I know Erica worked through this for years as well. Like this ability to kind of like find the things that I like to hear because I want words of affirmation, but at the same time, the struggle to reach those. And so there's almost like I said this about someone who fucked up recently politically, and I couldn't even tell you who it is because it's such a
It's a long list.
long list. But
Just throw a dart out.
Literally.
Just gonna say that. Just throw a dart. You'll hit one.
Well, this is how sad it is. I don't remember if it was someone who fucked up politically or someone I watched on a true crime doc, but I remember saying, like, I empathize with that person, but I do not feel sorry for them. And that difference is so unique and interesting because it's like, I remember who it was. It was a guy who a woman killed the person he was like thinking of fooling around with, the woman he was dating. And so, and my wife just kept saying, over a man?
I mean, you're not wrong.
Over a man? And I was like, baby, I heard you the first 5 times. I need to hear what they're saying. And they featured him right at the end, like catching up. And he was just like, I regret fucking everything. And like, he was very clearly like upset and making his life not fun because he felt he deserved nothing. Right. And I was like, I mean, yeah, but I also have empathy for him. And so there was this weird experience within me where I'm like, you know, and so because of my emotional maturity, I can access that difference, right? Whereas so many people who can't, they're like, that's the same. You're feeling sorry for, no, I'm not. And I feel like that emotional maturity, when you have that in any relationship, but especially a sexual romantic relationship, it's insane what you can reach in terms of the quality of that intimacy and that connection. And I don't know, you're right when you say what they don't know, they don't know. You know, if you can't access that emotional maturity level of depth of connection, like, then you can't. You know, you can work
and
towards
if
it.
you've never had it modeled for you.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
That's a huge part of it. Like I have conversations with my dad every so often because my dad, my dad's a boomer. He was in special forces in the Navy, and then he worked in finance for many years. And he is every time we stumble across something, I have to remember that he is remarkably like thoughtful and open-minded for, like the way he was raised. And my dad has remarkable access to his emotions now to be able to describe, how he's feeling about things. But, every so often we'll talk about the fact that like he sort of had to raw dog it to figure all that out because he grew up in an incredibly abusive household. And then he went into the military, and then like he and my mom got married when they were both quite young. And then he was, saw himself to be the head of the household. I'm not sure my mother agreed with that assessment, but like that was his, and so every so often I'm struck by the fact that like he had no idea what he was doing, but just that like there had to be a better way, and especially it seems to have ramped up when I was born because he did not want me to be raised the way he himself was raised. But every so often I'm like, how did you even do that, Dad? Like, in the mid-70s, like, how did you decide you were going to do something different and then just did it without any, like, no, like, family to guide you through that? Because my mom's family was screwed up, too. It's not even like he could look at her family and be like, there's a functional one. Like, no, they were both absolutely, like, marooned, And then I remember that, like, people who want to will. Like if it is important enough to them to learn the skill, to change the behavior, whatever, they will figure it out. Also, my dad is nothing if not stubborn. I get it from him. So I can also imagine being like, no, fuck you. I'm going to figure this out. And he did, for the most part. But I think that is like, I think that's one of the things that being queer, and I do mean being culturally queer, is like a cheat code for, because certainly I don't think that our current Treasury Secretary, for example, like falls into this, but like people who are culturally queer have a little bit of a cheat code for how to access that vulnerability, at least the beginnings of it, because you have to abandon your whole, whatever your whole previous situation was, and like step into your own authenticity. Requires that type of courage and vulnerability. So I think it's easier from that place to like continue to grow into it, as opposed to people who are gay but not culturally queer, who are hanging on to every single bit of privilege they have, usually as white people, always as cis people, not always, mostly. You know, they it's the same as in heteroflexible people, right? It's like, I'm doing this one thing, which is like I'm partnered with someone of the same gender, or, you know, in the case of some of the sort of trans medicalist, like binary trans women who are like, you know, I am a woman now, I am a straight woman. You know, that like they have somehow managed to like claim a part of themselves, like, but without being vulnerable, by doubling down on their like attachment to the privilege and the structure. It has a fascinating thing to study and a frustrating thing to experience.
That is like the most shorthand way to say that, and I am going to steal it.
Do it.
It's a fascinating thing to study, but it is
a frustrating thing
to experience because it's so true. Oh my God.
And also, especially as a historian, you know, I'm just like, this will not save you. It will not save you. You are going to be there in the cars right next to us. Maybe you'll be in 2 cars behind us, but like, we're all going to be there. You cannot flourish or be safe in this system.
And that's why it always astounds me when you have people who want, and to your point earlier, want the perks of being like culturally queer, but don't actually want to do the work. And the thing is, so many times when people start doing that, when they try to live the culturally queer perked life, there is such an inauthenticity that comes with that anyone who is actually like, when you are actively queer and you understand that you have had to legitimately give up proximity to some sort of privilege because of the fact that you have fully accepted your queerness, and is like, no, I cannot live a lie. I cannot try and stand in the middle of 2 worlds. I have to pick a side. And the side that I'm going to pick is my full authenticity. And then you see people who are straddling that line, and they're like, oh, no, I'm just going to hop on this side. Oh, nope, I'm just going to hop on this side. And it's whatever is like trending at the moment. When that happened, queer people can peg that from a mile away. We can see it coming. We can see it as a red flag. And we're like, no. And then those types of people get mad when us actual queer folk are calling them out, saying, pick a side.
Yeah. Or I feel like, and this is such a like weirdly specific internet thing, because I also think there's such a big difference between like internet discourse around queerness and like the lived experience of those of us who are just like out in our lives doing things with other queer people. Like that's very, very different worlds.
Yes.
But there is, especially online, there is this, I feel like I have become the role of like bisexual defender of the lesbian community, because there is this like desire for lesbians to like sign off on people's queerness, you know what I mean? Or this desire to like attach yourself to like like lesbian community, and it's just like leave the lesbians alone. Like you, like bisexuals, pansexuals, heteroflexibles, whatever. Come on, everybody come over here. Leave the lesbians alone. Like there's plenty of us. We can all just chat over here. Please leave them alone. They're already the most marginalized of groups in our already marginalized group. Leave the lesbians alone.
But sometimes lesbians be asking for it, in the sense that they like the turfy ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's different. Yes, don't leave the turfy lesbians alone. Drum them out of every coffee shop. But like the cool lesbians, just leave the regular lesbians alone.
The regular cool lesbians are cool, but the ones that are like that again have decided that their privilege is not something they want to let go of.
Yeah.
And they must, just the idea of any marginalized community pushing down other marginalized communities drives me fucking insane.
It's the crabs in a bucket behavior that
it's
just
such like, why?
we're all still going in the pot, man. You can scramble to the top, but we're all going in. So
Lesbians, like, they kind of, like, to me, just the association, like the word association that was coming up was lesbians are the Gen X of the queer community.
as a Gen Xer, you're not wrong.
Like, leave them alone. But also,
Yes.
if they come at you, you better have everything in order, because they're gonna get you.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
Except the ones that want to keep proximity to their boomer parents or like their boomer elder siblings or whatever, because they're like, no, those are the turfy ones. And I'm like, huh? Okay.
Well, it's the turfy and biphobic lesbians that drive me nuts. I'm just like,
although I will say, like, having as a bisexual person who lived through the 90s and the invention of bisexuality,
the invention.
Oh my god! Newsweek said it was invented in 1993 or whatever.
Newsweek.
All right. I will say that, like, and again, I think this is such specifically online discourse, like the biphobia of lesbians now, I think, is actually mostly bisexual people misunderstanding that, like, lesbians don't want to date people who aren't culturally queer, don't want to date bisexual people who aren't culturally queer.
Yeah, that's such a good way of saying
which
that.
is different than I don't want to date bisexual people.
Right.
But, like, if I was a lesbian, I wouldn't want to date a hetero flexible person either.
Totally.
Like, no.
Well, and I think in general, like, if someone wants to, I was actually having this conversation with a friend in Minneapolis the other day about, like, if you're dating someone who is regularly dating people who've never experimented with their queerness and they're just now experimenting, that is a red flag on them.
Yes.
Because they are desiring a level of immaturity that they can train you to be a specific kind of partner or a specific kind of queer, or to put up with toxic behavior.
Yeah.
You know, it's different when someone makes, you know, like, it doesn't mean that every single time that someone partners with someone who's being, you know, having first experiences, that does not mean that's who they are. But if that's a reoccurring pattern, where, you know, like, after a year of bad behavior, you're eventually like, am I supposed to just keep? I mean, is this what I'm supposed to put up with? Like, is this okay? And I've heard this a lot from different friends, and I can understand why there's kind of, like, you know, the both sides of the coin kind of thing. But yeah, like, having that desire for someone to have some understanding of what it means to be in queer community, to be culturally queer, to understand what it feels to lose your privilege. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with wanting that. There's nothing wrong with wanting that.
Like, I have had long-term relationships with cis straight men. I have been engaged to a couple of them. I will never date a cis straight man again. And not because there aren't some that I find attractive or interesting, but because I want my next long-term partner to be culturally queer.
Yeah.
Because I want someone, like, I am, like, queer for a living at this point. So, like, I do not choose to be in a relationship with someone to whom I have to explain every aspect of my life all the time. Even if they are the most, like, open-minded, willing to learn, you know, like,
it's true.
I'm uninterested in that.
Well, and even beyond romantic relationships, I feel like I have a limit to the friendships that I can have with people who need a lot of answers and education. And I mean,
patient with friends.
I mean deep friendship. I'm less talking about, like, my kind of large network of incredible humans. Some of you are listening now. Like, that I have so much. I was recently talking to my friend Mitson about the fact that, like, I have so much patience and extension because of the fact that I'm seen and known in my marriage the way that I am, and in my deep connected friendships the way that I am. So it's given me so much energy to put out into the world, and so much expansion and so much patience for those that are learning and growing. And it's why I so often say, like, why are we canceling everyone left and right? Like, why aren't we giving people a space to learn and to grow if they desire to? If they're oh God, I almost used a Christian word. If they are I was gonna say repentant. Oh god.
yeah. But it sort of fits.
Anyway, if they like feel remorse, like why are we so rushing to that? Like we need to give people space to grow and also like some accountability, because if we disappear, how are they being held accountable? Like I feel like there's a level of accountability that requires us to stay present enough. Like I have a good friend right now who has a friend in their group that has been just continuing a bad behavior for like a while, about a year. And they were expressing this, like, I don't know if this is, I think this might be the point where I say like, hey, until you figure your shit out, we can't hang. Right. Mm-hmm. And even that is not disappearing. That is saying, here's my boundary. I need you to take care of yourself. I need you to take care of this shit. And I guess that's what I'm saying is like we there is nuance. There's a lot of nuance to it. But if we surround ourselves with people who are putting life into us and who see us as our whole selves and know our experience, and we don't have to waste so much energy in that space, guess how much we have to give outside of it?
Yeah.
That's the root. That's the root of what I'm saying. Yeah.
I just think sort of in general, it shouldn't be the default responsibility of the injured group to educate the like
I agree.
repentant person, and that's one of the things, like I talk about this a lot because like I am an educator. So I am a person who chooses to do this work. Like Portia Noir talks about this a lot on her channel, where she's like, I have chosen to do this work, to put myself out here, to educate, to lead, to guide. So I think that's what it is. I do think that those of us who have, have the stable community, have the sense of self, have the energy, whatever. I do think we have a responsibility to use that to like better humanity and, to try and bring along the people who are sort of like genuinely curious and humble and like trying to figure out where they went sideways.
Yeah. But it's not for all of us.
Yeah, but I don't think it should like default to us. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like it is not and never will be the job of queer people to like teach homophobes how to be better people.
Legit. Like I am a part of a community that meets once or twice a month in different ways that kind of houses my nonprofit. And one of those spaces is kind of a mixed political space. And so there are people that could show up that might be on the conservative side of politics and might not have ever met someone like me. And if they have, they're definitely not in community with them. And I had an experience where one of these people expressed that they had been in an ex-gay ministry space previously. And I, because of like knowing that this is the space I was walking into, I was not surprised by this. And I felt like I dealt with it really well. I made a few jokes like around the fact that community had a really gay name, so of course it was an ex-gay space. Like there were some things that I did that made this person laugh actually, and then ended up we connected later, and so like I figured there was some nuance to that and their history. Well, one of the leaders later said to me, I sent me a long email, was deeply apologetic because they felt responsible for the fact that this person could even walk in the door and say this thing. And I said, I think you're forgetting that, like, I choose to be here. And I've known since day one that you invited me to this space, that this is the kind of space it is. And so if I don't have the space and energy to give others, then I don't go. Right. And that is my own boundary. So don't feel the need to feel responsible for this. If you wanted to carry some of that weight because you're also queer, then that's fine. But please don't think that like I would just walk into this space and feel like I deserve some level of like catering to that no one else is getting. right? Like I want, if I'm walking in this space, it's because I'm okay with having a moment that I'm going to stand up for me in. That's okay. And I think that that's important. Like so many people are walking into spaces with no energy and they're having these experiences.
Because the world is on fire.
Well,
the world
there's
is fucking
yes.
on fire. Exactly. But we just don't know how to rest.
That too.
We don't know how to give ourselves space and we don't know how to put ourselves in community with people who are filling us up. And that's what I'm like, my goal right now, at least what I'm trying to do in life is help people learn how to build community and build like relationships and friendships with people who are giving you life, you know, and that it's not all coming from one place. Because again, that's like continuing the fucking like structures that are fucking with us. But
yeah, and I do think that there's a, you know, I think this is sort of generational. I think it's tied to a lot of things, the loss of third spaces, the pandemic.
yes.
But I do think that there is also a misunderstanding, especially among younger generations, about what community is.
Yes.
Like your friends are your friends and your community is your community. And those two are not necessarily the same thing.
That's right.
Like,
Correct.
I am besties with one of my neighbors and I am in community with the rest of my neighbors, right? Like we
That's a
all
good
live on the
example.
same shared piece of property and like we're friendly and we share responsibilities for, you know, what's going on where we live. But like, we're not all friends, but we are warmly in community together. But I am like besties with one of the people in this situation. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And I think that gets lost among a lot of especially younger queer people. You know, and partly because you have no spaces, third spaces, partly because 90% of our elders are dead. You know, and it just like, and I also think this is like largely a white people problem because I don't think that like Black communities, Latina community, like I think they know what community is. And I do think this is like largely a white people in the US problem, not understanding what community is or how to build one.
Yeah, we can blame the Christian nationalists for that.
Yeah, because they don't know what the fuck community is. I am cursing a blue streak today. I'm sorry.
It's fine.
I have a lot of big feelings about everything that's going on.
But that's the thing is like, and that's also the thing that I think is really incredibly frustrating is because those of us that were raised in any sort of high control religious space, it can be evangelicalism, it can be Catholicism, it can be Protestantism, it can be whatever flavor of Christianity you got. They were so concerned with controlling everything that you had to rely on everything outside of you to tell you who you were and what you should be. And that was their definition of community, is your church is your community. Your church is who you need to go to if you're struggling with anything or if you need some help or what have you. Your church is your friends, your church is your community. Everything goes through the church.
Well, and then the part where I think there was a big, besides, you know, there's several big mistakes in that system, but it was your community is more important than your family.
Yes.
Your leaders are above your parents. They're above your, and so that I felt like, and then you have the system obviously of like husband, wife and shit like that. It's like, but the fact that your church and your pastor are above that, that fucks with you big time. I think there are things that I took from it. I'm thankful, you know, for my past in experiencing community in those spaces, because there are ways in which I said, oh, this felt good. Like, I'm going to hold on to that. And this was obviously fucked up and a shit show. So let's try and avoid that next time. And like, I think I learned community best from my parents. Like, I feel like they did understand what it meant to welcome people in and want to care for humans and just like generally love humans regardless of what their past was. I don't know, like in building community myself now, doing a lot of that. I've been doing that for years, but there are moments where I am struggling with how much do I protect this? Like, and how do I protect this in a healthy way? And I think that like sometimes we make mistakes and we learn from those mistakes, and that's okay.
I mean, ideally, yes.
Yeah, you're not perfect, and sometimes we're gonna learn along the way. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think a lot of people know how to build community, and I think your example is such a good one, Amanda. Like that example of like, because I think about all of the immigration issues, all of the ICE issues, and I'm sure that if there were people in your community that were threatened, that those people would band together to make sure that people are fed, to make sure people make it to doctor's appointment, to make sure that they can pay their rent, whatever it is, and they're still not your besties. But you have their fucking back. Right? And I think that that's what we're getting at, you know, is like, is that we just, and I think about sex in relationship to this, by the way, because I think about what I've experienced in community spaces that are impacted by sexual trauma, and bringing sexual positivity in those spaces, and how hard that balancing act is. And then I think about young queer folks and how often I hear that, like, I had a young queer person literally last week say to me that, like, I accidentally ended up in a polycule and I did not know that I was basically being initiated into a polycule. And I was like, wait a second, no, I did not consent to this.
Oh no.
And I was like, whoa, like,
That is a severe lapse in communication.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's not the first time I've heard this. It is not the first time I've heard this from a young 20-something. Like, I don't understand but what I think of often is that because they're feeling freedom, and because of hookup culture, and because they're not putting labels on their relationships and things like that, there's like this, lots of words are being spoken, but not the important ones. Like, we're not.
Lots of words, very little communication.
Yes, exactly.
There's so much being said, but nothing is being comprehended.
And so they end up in these scenarios where, oh, did I just lose my community because I fucked someone in this community, or because I fucked multiple someones in this community? And it's hard to find that healthy place. And I don't know. I don't have the answer, but it's interesting to hear about how young queer culture is growing in some ways, and then also
regressing in others.
Regressing, yeah. I'm like, are they starting over, or are they regressing? I'm not sure.
They're regressing.
This podcast is hosted by me, Kit Sargent, co-hosted and produced by Jess Grace Garcia of Springward Productions, and the theme music is by Brian Smith of Holy Holy Music Productions. If you could do us a huge favor and please like, follow, comment, share, do all of the things on all of the socials. You could follow the podcast on Instagram @_queer.consciousness for all the latest episodes, as well as any other exciting news. When you're listening on Spotify, please leave a 5-star rating and use the comment box for anything you'd like us to talk about. When you're listening to Apple Podcasts, please leave a comment and a 5-star rating. If you'd like to be on the podcast, send a message to queerconsciousnesspod@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the podcast, check out our Patreon at patreon.com/queerconsciousnesspodcast. We are trying to grow as organically as possible, and this helps other like-minded people who want to empower and encourage others on their journey. So until next time, remember to stand in your truth and know that you are worthy, just as you are. Hey friend, just wanted to take a quick second to remind you that if you or someone you know is struggling and don't know where to turn, the trained volunteers at the LGBT National Hotline are here to help. Because sometimes the strongest thing to do is to ask for help. The National Hotline phone number is 888-843-4564. And if you want to check out the other things that they have available for them to help you with, you can check out the lgbthotline.org in order to be able to see all of the services that they offer in order to help our community.